Still a sport without a home, and one that now seethes with disappointment and recrimination. Adam Parsons, BBC News.
England play Greece tomorrow at Old Trafford in a game which should see them qualify for next summer's World Cup finals. With the latest on that match and all the other World Cup qualifiers, over now to Mary Rhodes at the stadium.
Well, at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, the stadium will be packed with about 70,000 fans. The England coach Sven-Göran Eriksson typically wasn't giving very much away about the side that will face Greece tomorrow, and he wasn't prepared to talk about allegations of some players' involvement in late-night drinking. So all is focused now on automatic qualification for the World Cup finals.
A dress rehearsal in Manchester today for the victory parade now expected of England. And just down the road, the players' final rehearsal at Old Trafford, where they were shouldering such responsibilities lightly. They seemed unaffected too by further reports of inappropriate behaviour, which appear to have been exaggerated.
This close to such an important game, and England should only have on-field issues to worry about. Now, tales of late-night drinking clearly serve as a distraction, although Sven-Göran Eriksson is refusing to get too exercised by them.
You can't expect that you have beautiful days every day of your life, but problems are there to resolve, and if you never have a problem, I think it's also one way a boring life.
It can't be too boring then for the German coach of the Greek national side. He conducts training through an interpreter, and his team is said to be in disarray. But England's captain has warned against complacency.
We know that this is a game where if we win it, we're in the World Cup finals, and that means a lot to every one of the players here. We know it means a lot to the whole nation, but to every one of the players it means a massive amount.
This evening, dozens of mini Beckhams were having their moments of glory in this football-mad city, and some of them will be at Old Trafford tomorrow, hoping to see their role models taking a step closer to World Cup glory. David Eads, BBC News, Manchester.
Meanwhile, Scotland have a much tougher task ahead. They only have a very slim mathematical chance of reaching the playoffs. So tomorrow's game against Latvia at Hampden Park is very likely to be the last in charge for Craig Brown.
The way out sign may have already beckoned for Scotland's World Cup hopes, but certainly not for their commitment. Only some mathematical miracles can rescue their chances of qualifying and probably coach Craig Brown's job. For all those negatives, though, their thinking remains positive.
There are many examples in the history of football where a result has been overturned and where a remarkable thing has happened. I mean, I was in a Dundee squad that beat Cologne 8-1. Freak results like that are possible.
Scoring goals, though, is Scotland's problem. They need plenty of them and a defeat for rivals Croatia to stand any chance, and that may be stretching even their optimism. With qualification verging on the impossible, Craig Brown has chosen his youngest ever international squad. So for the players at least, tomorrow may prove a new beginning. For their manager, though, it's more likely to prove the end. Andy Swiss, BBC News, with the Scotland squad.
While Northern Ireland and Wales can't qualify, the Republic are already through to the playoffs. While viewers in Wales can see their match live on BBC Two, there'll be highlights of the games in Scotland and Northern Ireland. And of course, Match of the Day will be coming from here live, hopefully in the dry, where you can see plenty more of that David Beckham interview. Peter.
Mary, thank you. And now back to the main news. Tony Blair's visit to Pakistan to bolster support for the international coalition against terrorism. He said the trap around the Taliban in neighbouring Afghanistan had almost been set. And he spoke of a post-Taliban regime which would be broadly based. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by our diplomatic correspondent James Robbins. James, after 3.5 weeks, no military action, no revenge strikes, bin Laden still at large. Was it meant to be like this?
I'm not sure it was meant to be like this at the very beginning when we heard the rhetoric of war from President Bush, but I think now Washington and London are saying that patience is a virtue and will bring its own rewards. They're saying that partly because there are difficulties in putting together the military coalition, but I think also they're saying it because they feel that the Taliban is in danger of collapse, that it's weakening fast. They think that because its sources of money have almost completely dried up, taxes, for instance, on cross-border trade into Pakistan, it can't pay a lot of its supporters, a lot of local chiefs who only, frankly, were loyal to the Taliban as long as they were paid regularly. No money, no support. So there's a real suspicion that the Taliban may fall of its own accord with very little or even no military action. If that were to happen, and if the rebel forces were to get control of the territory of Afghanistan, then it would surely only be a matter of time before bin Laden himself was taken. Donald Rumsfeld, the American Defense Secretary, very interestingly saying this is going to be a long war, more like the Cold War than a hot war, but remember the Cold War ended with internal collapse.
But do you find it extraordinary that they're already talking in some detail about the shape of the government that succeeds the Taliban?
This is very interesting. The United Nations is already actively involved in talks about the post-Taliban succession. We know that the King of Afghanistan in exile has volunteered to go back to head a Grand Council of Chiefs and Elders, a Loya Jirga. Now, that hasn't met in Afghanistan since the 1930s. The idea that the UN and others are sponsoring is that that could be the foundation of a genuine multi-ethnic representative democracy. But it's a long way off, and there's a long road to pass over before we can get there.
James Robbins, thank you. Well, it's 25 minutes past 10. I'll be back a little later with an update on the day's headlines. But now we join our news teams across the United Kingdom. And the main news tonight. The Prime Minister has said the trap around the Taliban in Afghanistan is almost set. He's won Pakistan's backing to help rebuild the country if the Taliban are overthrown. The Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon has been slapped down by the White House for calling President Bush an Arab appeaser. And Britain has lost the World Athletics Championships after scrapping the Games' London Stadium. Newsnight is starting now over on BBC Two, but from the 10 o'clock news, good night.